Hello, everyone. Tracie here, your resident business rebel, and you're listening to Cocktails, Coffee, and Conversations podcast, the show that lets true stories and insider secrets of digital entrepreneur life unfold. Our business world is growing, and as an online business coach and digital product creator, I believe you didn't become an entrepreneur to grin and bear your way through business. So I'll be your guide as we drop in on coaching calls, have intimate sit downs with online personalities you love, and discuss ideas, opportunities, and strategies circulating our online world. So pop in your earbuds, tap follow, and join me as I demystify this thing called business.
There's something that happens when somebody who's a subject matter expert and has been doing their thing for a long time that it's like breathing to them. And you're a person who's like not really like a here I am kind of person. I'm going to say you prefer to be out of the spotlight. It's not like you don't want to help people. It's not like you don't want to be known for your thing. It's not like you don't want to make an impact. All of those things are true for you. There's just a very specific way you want to do it. Showing up and, I call it like doing jazz hands is not the way you want to do it.
Welcome in, everyone. Tracie here, and today I am with Jen Liddy, brand message and content strategist, and we're peeling back the curtain on a topic that resonates with so many of us in the digital entrepreneur space, navigating the spotlight while staying true to ourselves. If you've ever wrestled with how to share your magic without losing your mind or your soul in a shiny world of content creation, this conversation is for you. Jen and I dig into the real talk about marketing, being seen, and crafting a message that feels authentic without the constant pressure to perform. But who is Jen? Leaving her job teaching English and jumping into entrepreneurship with zero idea of how to run a business or do marketing? Fast forward 11 years beyond many, many mistakes and several business models, Jen now pours her word nerdiness into a job she loves, brand message and content strategies. She shows service providers how to translate their expertise and big ideas into words that work to attract their exact right clients. Let's drop in on our conversation now. So, because it's kind of interesting because we first met in this peer mastermind idea, right? And we bonded over, well, you very, very, I mean, I would say in my world, it's bravely. For you, it might have just been something that you would do anytime. But to me, you bravely posted that you were like, hey, I want to talk to people. I want to meet people, which for me would be like, okay, I gotta calm down now. Okay, I put this out in the world. But I saw like a lot of synergies because of how you see, like we would bond over messaging, but you see it from this point of content, the same way that I see it over this point of sales, right? So we had like our little getting to know each other call, and we were like, oh my gosh, we are saying the exact same thing, but I'm inserting the word sales and you're inserting the word content. And it just kind of felt, well, I thought it just kind of felt right, right? And it really balanced each other. And since for me, my greater idea is to change that relationship and kind of change that culture because it doesn't have to be gross. It doesn't have to be, icky. I wanted someone like you in my life. So thank you, Jen, for being willing to come out here and for putting that very first post out into the world.
Well, I will say it was not easy for me because I am so like I love people and I love one-on-one conversations and I'm friendly and I'm open and all of those things, and at the same time it's very hard for me to put an invitation out. I am the kind of person who would never want to host a party because what if people didn't come? Right? So how I freaking wound up in this world of marketing, which is all about putting stuff out there. And also, I don't know how much you and your guests know about human design, but my energetic approach to life is as a projector. And one of the major things about being a projector is you have to wait for the invitation, and nothing really feels comfortable until you're invited in. And I always am enamored of these people who are like, I'm just going to pop over. I'm just going to stop by. It's no big deal. And I would like never stop over someone's house unless I had texted and made sure it was okay, or even like really need to be invited or have some kind of an open invitation. So I love that you think it was like, no, it was not second nature for me to put that out. I really had to be, I'm trying to be intentional about growing my community and growing the people I'm in relationship with, because I forgot that I'm an extrovert, first of all, and that I really love people, and but the pandemic kind of beat the
Yeah.
extroversion out of me, and I'm lonely in my business because I work in a silo, I work at home, my major job all day is letting the dogs and the cats in and out and in and out, but a lot of times, like, I don't see another person unless it's a client or a call like this, so I was just like, "I miss humans," so I'm just gonna put this invitation out there, and I'm so glad you took me up on it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it is curious, and I always say, like, I must be some sort of I don't know if the word closet is right, but, like, subtype, because I've had 2 or 3 different people, check my chart, right? And I always come up as a Manny Gen, where I'm heavy on
Mm,
the Manny than I am on the Gen, but every time somebody talks about this projector stuff and the invitation, I'm like, "Yes, that's me, that's me, that's me." But, birthdays aren't lying. I know what time, like, I don't have an AM, PM switch or anything like that. Like, I know I am
you've triple
legitimately what I
checked.
am.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, but, I do, like, there's so many things that I have in common with projectors that it
Mm,
cracks me up, but
mhm,
I had this kind of curiosity learning about your background, about this, English teacher background, and
mhm.
and how you talk about that role of knowing yourself, right? Or to put it in a proper quote, "Know thyself." And but now that you're living in this world of content, I was trying to figure out what were those direct lines. And did you fall into content because you had that background, or did you just have kind of this natural love of it? Did it play into that whole, know thyself? Like, where were these parallels?
Yeah, so in my content marketing content, so let me just give a background. What I do for people is I'm a brand messaging strategist. I'm a content strategist. So I basically help people know how to talk about what they do and then know how to put it out into the world so it feels good for them. But I came from this background of being a high school English teacher and a college professor, and there's nothing more different than being a high school teacher. You don't have to market yourself when you're a high school teacher or college professor. Like, your kids show up in your class, the end. And then, of course, you start a business and you're like, how am I going to get people to come into my classroom, basically, right? It was not a linear thing. And I wish I had known myself a lot earlier and a lot better earlier. And so over the course of all of these years, I've been just figuring out what my particular magic and strengths are. I always knew I was a good teacher, but how did that translate into owning a business? And how did that translate into marketing yourself? And last year in my content in 2023, I spent a lot of time talking to different experts who could bring in these little nuggets to help us all know ourselves better, because I've realized, but and this is an embarrassing statement, but I did not know until my late 30s what an introvert and an extrovert was, because I had taken the Myers-Briggs, and it really started to make a change in my life and actually all my relationships, because I figured out I'm an extrovert. What that means, which I didn't understand, was that I get energy from being around other people.
Yes.
I am surrounded by introverts, and what that means is they get depleted from other people. Now, until this point, and I'm telling you, like 37, 38, 39, I'm thinking extroverts are noisy, extroverts are loud, extroverts are friendly, and introverts are shy, right? And that's like all
Oh,
I
okay.
know about it. But when I started to understand more about what these things can teach us about ourselves, I just got hungry for more, because I was like, the more I knew that I was an extrovert, and my husband and my best friend and my child and everybody I'm surrounded by are introverts, it just helped me have better relationships and understand them and stop doing that judgy thing that I always did. And then the more that I learned about myself, like, oh my God, then human design came along in my life in 2017. And that's when I figured out, oh, the energetics of yourself. And there's these manifesting generators. And then there's 5 different types. And what are those? And when I learned I was a projector, it felt like I came home to myself. I always say that because I was like, "Oh, that's why I don't want to insert myself or ever make a cold call or ever do any of those things that are really hard if you don't have an invitation." The more I learned about myself in all of these different ways, there's all of these formal assessments, but just like informal ways of knowing myself, it helped me be able to show up for my content and my marketing and ultimately like my business and my business model more easily, because I don't know about you, but when I started in the online world, all I was doing was just emulating what other people were doing. And in fact, when I started in business, that's all like I knew how to do was, I knew how to be a teacher in my classroom and do it my way. And I knew it did and didn't work for me as a teacher. But when I got into business, I felt really out of my depths. And I was like, I don't have a master's in business administration. And I will say this facetiously, but like I only had 2 master's degrees in like, education and adult literacy. So, I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. So I really emulated and watched and compared. And a lot of times it just never felt right. And in 2023, I was like, I really want to lean in and learn like why my business doesn't feel right for me, why marketing that way doesn't feel right for me, why doing this feels better for me. And I really honed in on knowing more about myself and wanting my audience to know that too. So a lot of my podcasts from last year were interviewing all of these, experts in these other fields to help us know ourselves, because when we know ourselves, it's the same thing for sales. Like you can do marketing better and you can do sales better when you know what works for you and what doesn't.
Mm. So I'm curious about the part where you say that like you knew how to do teaching, but not the business part. And do you think that that was just because you were so immersed in teaching that that evolution of the knowing yourself and knowing what you wanted and knowing how to do it, like you were kind of, it was built in, that experimentation was built in, right? Because you had to have that on the job training. You had to have that teacher development. You had to go and shadow somebody before you had your own class, and then you had
Right.
to be in this class and then that class, and there was all that stuff. And then whenever you're an entrepreneur, it's just like, okay, off you go.
That's
Ta-da.
right. And I think I had a mistaken belief that if I had had a master's degree in business administration, that I somehow would have known these things. What I have learned
Oh, yeah,
now from people is like the MBA is not that it's not that it's not valuable, but like what most people do is really learn once they're in it.
very much. Yeah, I have one. That it's one of the
Oh, you
4
do?
degrees I have.
You
Yeah,
have 4
yeah, and
degrees.
yes, yes, and one of the beautiful things, one of the schools that I still work with and I mentor for, we actually have an undergrad, in entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
and it is separate from regular business learning, because
Makes
you're
sense.
not inside of a corporate where
Yeah,
you are just doing this one job in this one department with this one thing, right?
right.
In this entrepreneur part, you're having to be all the things at all the time, even if you do have a team, even when you are growing, because, oh, wait, now you're also a manager and a boss and a CEO. Oh, and you're a this. Oh, and you're a that. Right. So
Yeah.
it is a whole entire discipline. So even if you think, oh, okay, yeah, the best thing I can do to learn business is to get XYZ degree, it's still that kind of well, no, there's that experimentation, that learning, that
Right.
on the jobness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially, to your point, like online, you're on the job is us sitting here by ourselves with our laptop going, okay, great,
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
what? Right. There's no colleagues unless you go to a coffee shop and you're sitting there looking around, wondering what everybody else is doing. Yeah, and they think you're, like, trying to steal their credit card.
Right. When I was a teacher,
Right?
I had mentors, I had colleagues, I
Yeah,
had people I could go to say, "Hey, this isn't working with this kid," or "This isn't working with this book," or "This lesson." There
yeah.
was another thing that happened as a teacher that I only realized later that I brought into business entrepreneurship, basically, is when you're a teacher. I was a teacher from 1999 to 2013, 14, and I did a lot of different kinds of teaching. And something that was a thread throughout my teaching experience was you're just a teacher. Even though you have
Oh,
several advanced degrees, teachers are often told that this is all you're doing, you're just a teacher. These are your parameters. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And there's this vibe, you're not getting paid a lot. You're expected to do a lot of extra work. And
mhm.
there's a lot of things that you're not compensated for that you're expected to do. And I kind of realized when I left teaching that I had almost been beaten down by the industry with the idea of like,
Yeah,
you're just a teacher. And I used to say that, and I had to learn to undo that when I came out of teaching, that that is not the ethos in the business world, right? Like I could never say I was just a teacher. And I only realized once I got out of teaching what a gift teaching was, and all of the brilliance that I brought to the classroom, I really could transfer over, but I couldn't see it until I was in it. And so that again was another way of knowing myself, which I thought I needed this degree, but what I really needed was just like, well, everything I had learned in the classroom for those however many years, 15 years, but also like the way that my brain works
yeah,
helped too. So all of those things converged for me to finally get to the point I think it was like 2022, 23, where I was just like, I don't want to do that anymore. That thing that's being done online, I don't like that. I want to change it. And I'm not
Mm.
going to lie, it took me a long time to revise what it looks like, what my business looks like, who I work with, what my messaging is, and get really, really clear on it, not being influenced by other people.
Do you feel like you have that freedom to just say, no, now that you have this business versus like in your past career? Or
Yeah.
do you still feel some of those kind of, almost bureaucratic type parameters even in our industry where, you are still while, like, there might not be, a school board or like
Mhm,
a
mhm,
parent
the
teachers,
parents.
association against you, there
Yeah.
is still, almost like this backlash, if you kind of go against the grain or you stand up against stuff.
I'm noticing I care less and less about that. That also might be that I'm 53 and I just care a lot less about a lot of things now being in my 50s. It's very freeing. Also, I'm seeing a shift happen online where people
Mhm.
aren't like, this is the way. I'm hearing more people talk
Right.
about this idea of, you really can have your own business. Here's somebody who did it. Don't necessarily emulate what she did, but you really have to figure it out for yourself. I'm hearing more of that messaging come out. So I actually don't think I engage with it anymore. It did rear its head though. This is interesting. One of the ahas that I really had was there are people that I have found there are people that I want to work with who have an expertise in their field, they're subject matter experts, they're service providers. They've been doing their thing for a long time and they don't like to be in the spotlight. They kind of come under that there you are kind of person. They're always going to walk into the room and go, "There you are. Look at you. Let's talk about you." And then there's other people in our life and online who come into a room and go, "Here I am. Look how amazing I am. This is like," and
Yeah.
they're awesome, right? And I realized when I really wanted to talk about the there you are people and offer things for them and offer support for them, I was a little worried like, oh, what will the here I am people say? Will they feel like I'm being against them? And for me, I
Mm.
think that was the last bastion of judgment that I had to kind of push through and well not really push through but heal through in order to be like no, it's really okay for me to just want to work with these people, to speak to those people, the people who want to be out of the
Yeah.
spotlight and not feel like I'm offending the people who don't mind the spotlight or even enjoy it. And I knew like that was like really old, pleasing, do the thing that you're thinking everybody wants you to do and just take a stand. And this was the first time in my business, and I've been in business since 2016 on my own. I feel like I'm taking a stand with messaging that feels really strong to me and very clear who I work with. And I feel like I've maybe been trying to straddle the lines for too long, and it has actually helped me back in my business.
That's interesting because I mean, those are the people that I work with, right?
Mhm.
They're the people that I call it like the different layers. So, often, yes, you might first notice or you're told that you're shy, right? And then you'll accept a label like an introversion, and then you'll discover a term like, HSP, like highly sensitive
Yeah.
people. Then you'll find your next layer, which might be projector in your case,
Right.
where whether you are like an INTJ versus an INTF or like all these other things that people go through, some that are on an energetic scale versus a psychological scale versus a I don't know, I read my horoscope today scale, right? There's all these different variations that people use to try to understand ourselves. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think about them in different layers, but it kind of comes to that basic, are you the kind of person who goes in a room and you tend to kind of hang out there, and if someone comes up and talk to you, you're happy to talk to them, but you don't run around the room like the hummingbird kind of getting to know people,
Right.
right? And that's my type. I'll be the
Mhm.
person standing in the corner drinking a bourbon. Come by, hang out, we'll talk, but we'll go deep
Yes.
instead of
Yep.
like staying surface,
Surface. Yeah.
right? Yeah. Whereas like my sister, and so it was easy for me to see these things because I would see how she would do things versus how I would do things. And we were so different that it was, obvious. Whereas
Mhm.
not everybody has that kind of, instant
Awareness.
in the wild sort of noticing.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas for her, it's like she'll have it and she will go to every single person, talk to every single like do it. And it's like, oh my God, just watching you makes me tired. I
Mhm.
can't imagine doing that kind of thing. Right.
Right.
Whereas like for me, I can go into what I call hostess mode. and and I can tend to people and make sure everybody has what they need, but then I'm hanging out in the pantry for a while decompressing before I have to go into round 2,
Putting the
right?
oxygen mask back on, right?
Yeah, and that was how I came to understand the term introversion, but
Uh-huh.
as a kid, because in school they had us take those Myers-Briggs tests, and they had us, go through all those kind of things to learn, were you an INTJ versus an ENTJ, and what do all those things mean, and blah 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 blah
Right,
blah.
right, right, right.
They love giving us tests in school. So, like when it was kind of like, who do I want to deal with? Who do I want to talk to? I saw it as that need. Well, who has the harder time putting themselves out there trying to make this into a business?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I never saw it as like oh, are they going to hate me if I don't also help them? I saw it as just who has the harder time initiating the conversation? Let me help them. Right.
And I think that's a much healthier approach than what I had going
We
on
all have our
for
stuff, you know.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our stuff, and honestly, like for me, mine would probably be if someone who was like I'm here, I'm in the spotlight. I would probably look at them and be like, I don't know how to help. Why do you need help?
Why do you need
And that
help?
would be my yeah,
Right,
like, and
right,
that
right.
that that would be like, oh, hang on, I need to check myself here. I obviously have an issue. But
Yes, yes.
let me like this is that invitation to a conversation and a chance for me to
Mm,
expand myself, right?
yeah,
Yeah. So like we again, it's that same sort of thread, but coming at it those different ways.
yeah.
Because I mean, when you and I first met, like I told you, I had this super hard time with the whole concept of content
Mhm.
because I just see content as this is what I did today and this is what I do
Oh, yeah.
today. And as a person who doesn't walk in a room saying I am here,
Mhm.
why on earth would I tell you what I did or how I do things? Or I, why would anybody care? I don't. So,
Yep.
so please give us the Gen version. Break it down for
Sure.
us and help the knees of the world out there.
I will. Well, there's something that happens when somebody who's a subject matter expert and has been doing their thing for a long time that it's like breathing to them. And you're a person who's like a not really like a here I am kind of person. I'm going to say you prefer to be out of the spotlight. It's not like you don't want to help people. It's not like you don't want to be known for your thing. It's not like you don't want to make an impact. All of those things are true for you. There's just a very specific way you want to do it. Showing up and, I call it like doing jazz hands is not the way you want to do it. And I have found this interesting thing. And I've been doing hours of market research to just really find out how people feel about this. It's not like an introvert versus extrovert thing. It's not a private versus open book thing. It's not even I'm willing to be on stage and I'm not. It's a really personal thing. And I think you really nailed it when you talked about all of these layers to peel back about ourselves. But I know that when I say to somebody, you have an expertise and you don't want to be in the spotlight to share it, like they get it just makes sense to them. And so I'm going to talk about two really specific tactics that will help people understand how to put themselves out there. And it's not about this is what I ate today or this is what I did today. It's not about it's not about being so quote unquote authentic that you're bringing people into like, I'm getting my hair colored today or I'm going to the gynecologist today. Like, it's not about that, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
couldn't imagine that.
no, me neither. Me neither. And remember, I'm noisy. I'm extroverted. I'm much more likely to be going around talking to people, having deep conversations. Maybe not as much as your sister, but maybe more than like my husband or you would, right? I still don't really want to be in the spotlight in my marketing. So the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of mirroring, which is really what marketing does. It is a way for your audience to see something that's going on for them and maybe for the first time ever have a name for it. Know that it's even a thing. Know that there's even a potential solution for it. Give them the words to understand it. And that doesn't mean that you, as the expert sharing your content in marketing, are breaking down all of the how to's and all of the steps. Like, that's not your job. Your job is really to help people see themselves in the ideas you share, the insights you have, the situations you present with, the shifts that you want them to consider. That's mirroring. It's basically reflecting to your audience. It might be their pain point, their challenge, or their issue. It might be like, hey, did you even know that this was a possibility? Did you even know that as a high school teacher, You could potentially have your own business in less than 5 years. Like, that's an option. Be like, "No, I never would have even known that that was an option because I'm surrounded by people in my own bubble." I think the best example I have of this is when I was 43 and I started having all of these premenopausal symptoms, which I didn't even know was premenopause because I'm 43. Like, why is this happening now?
Yeah.
So I went to my doctor and I told him everything that was going on, and he literally shrugged at me. And he was like, I don't know what to tell you. You're in your 40s now. And I'm like, this is just it? Like, oh my God, this
What
is
does that
it for the
even
rest of
mean?
my
Like,
life?
what?
I know. So for
Wow.
7 years, from 43 to 50, I woke up at the same time in the middle of the night, soaked with sweat, exhausted, like doing the counting the hours in my head until like how many hours am I going to get if I get up at 7? How many hours am I all of those things that you do when you're not sleeping and all of the other symptoms that came, like all the other horrible symptoms. When I was 50, right before COVID hit in 2020, I had a client who happened to mention to me this idea of bioidentical hormones. And she explained what they were, and I did the research. And basically, they're little hormone pellets that are created to your body's chemistry that bring the hormones back up to a more typical level. They're not for everybody, but I researched them and I went in. So I talked to the doctor. She's mirroring back my symptoms to me. Do you have this? Are you struggling with that? What about this? And I'm like, yes, yes. Oh my God, get out of my head. Thank you so much. I thought I was insane. So I get them. They change my life. I am sleeping through the night. I have my brain working again. I have a libido again. My husband is very happy. Like everything is now firing on all cylinders. So I went back the next time and I'm like, why didn't I know about this? Why don't you market this? Why is this the first time I'm hearing about this 7 years later? And she's like, well, I don't really like to market myself. I don't really want to do that. And I wanted to like say,
Yeah.
not very nice things to her because I was like, for 7 years of my life. And I always use that example because I think it's so relatable for women. And especially like no matter what phase of life you're in, there's something that you or your audience are going through or have gone through that you've normalized it so much that you don't even know that it's a problem that has a name, much less that there's people who can meet you right where you are and provide a solution for you. So that is a huge shift when it comes to marketing, to talk just normalizing what you're an expert in, just talking about it with people, not solving their problems, but just mirroring what's going on for them, presenting anything from the potential to the problem and everything in between.
And a lot of that is that coming to terms with what we're good at, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. That's a
You
great
know,
point.
because yeah, yeah, like we have to normalize owning our goodness before we have that comfort of normalizing like the mirroring part.
That's a beautiful point. I'm really glad you said that. I think that sometimes if we're asserting something that we believe or a point we want to make for somebody, it can feel like we're being a little bit showy. But if you really consider it that marketing is a service, that your mirroring is servicing just people like, oh my God, I didn't even know that, or I hadn't thought of it that way, or wow, that's a really great insight, or oh, there's a name for that, or there's a phrase for that, or
Mhm.
there's a different way to look at it. But you do have to be confident that what you're sharing is not only important, but like that it's okay for you to own it. And I,
Exactly.
this is a really great time to bring up this very nuanced point, which is when you are doing something for a really long time and you're really good at it, and you're probably surrounded by people who are also doing that thing. Being at a different place is very normal for you. Like you have your jargon, you have your shortcuts, you talk about it all the time in a way that's very far down the road. And you forget that there are still people on this planet who are at step 0 or -1. They haven't even started on their journey to figure this out yet. They don't have that language or that understanding. And so sometimes getting out of our own bubble and remembering like there's a
Mhm.
whole world of people out there. Like you're not speaking to the choir, you're speaking to the people who really need to hear it, and they're probably not in your bubble. So don't take for granted that there's an enormous population of people who do need to hear your expertise and you can claim it.
Yeah, and that is a big part there, right? It's getting out of the bubble. And that can be hard to do when especially like for those of us in an online business because a lot of times we're not only just hanging out with each other in order to have some semblance of coworkers, in order to have some kind of water cooler moments and people who understand what we're going through, but also because we do we courtesy follow each other, or we're on each other's email
Mm.
lists, not because I
Oh,
mean,
that's such
sometimes
a
we're
good
buying from each
point.
other, but just because it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to support you, right? But it's also like, what are we consuming? And are we making sure to see what those who are actually needing us are after and what they're talking about? Right.
That is a
Because a lot of
really
times,
good point.
like, we will tier what our what our humans are after. It's like, okay, well, someone who is at this point will need this kind of information, whereas at some point they will move over and they will need this level of information,
Yeah.
and then when they get through this part, then they'll need this level of information, right? But if we never go back and visit all the different levels, then we don't know, is that still accurate, or has there been saturation in marketing? It's called market sophistication. Like, maybe those levels are already moving as a whole, and we're forgetting to go back and reevaluate that.
Yep.
Right. And so we're like, wait, hang on, how come none of this is making sense anymore? Or how come everybody knows this? Or how come I'm getting lost in the shuffle? Or why does it feel like I'm now being left behind? Or,
Yeah.
all of the above. Right. And it's because we've accidentally, ended up in this one little place, and we haven't gone back to visit. And this actually happened not too long ago to myself, where I was on a stage talking to people who should have been at this other level, at this, what I would call probably the second or third tier of my
Okay.
audience level, right?
Mhm.
If I look at that in terms of my offers, so not my lower offer, but my higher tiered offer. And the question that they asked and the thing that they kind of hung on was something that I actually cover in my lower tiered offer. Like, in the stuff that I cover in like a $37 workshop that you can buy
Hmm.
on my website at any time.
Hmm, hmm.
And they were like, and these were people that were in seven figures, had teams, not even just like contractors, but had like permanent staff. And they were
Wow.
like, oh wait, hang on, this is something that I still struggle with. Can we actually dive into this a little bit more? And we kind of forget that it's like, oh yeah, we can make workarounds, right? We're smart. We can kind
Yes,
of work around
yes.
our struggles, and we can kind of create
Coping.
very
Yeah.
convoluted or very kind of things
True.
without ever getting to this heart of something. So like for you, I mean, you still survived for 7 years with all of this
Mhm.
not sleeping stuff, right? So
Right.
this lady who had these magic pills was probably like, "Oh, well, everybody already knows this stuff," or maybe they're already doing
Yes.
nutrition things, or maybe they're doing some form of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, for those listening. Like, maybe they're doing something else, and so I'm only talking to these people over here. And you're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I've done all this, but it's the wrong band aid. It's I've been
Yeah.
messing with the wrong kind of things, right?"
Totally. Yeah. Yep. Those are good
So
insights about getting back and knowing, relearning what your audience needs and what they know, and not making assumptions. Because I think we make a lot of assumptions as experts in our little silo, clacking away at our laptops. But until I really started talking to people, because I committed to doing hours and hours, like I said, of target market research. And it was only by talking to other humans and getting out of my head that I was like, this spotlight thing is a thing. Like, there's
oh
something
yeah.
here. And also, if I lean into this very clear side of the fence, I'll say, I can just talk to those people, and that frees me up. And I just have to mirror stuff to them, and I just have to reflect what they need. I don't have to take care of everybody, which is a
Mhm.
fast way to deplete yourself in marketing, also.
Very much so.
Yeah.
But even, like, I mean, I raised my hand and said that is me, but
Yeah.
obviously I have a business. I've been doing this for a while, but it's still an issue for me, right? So
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
back to like the tiered thing, it's like I might not be at a freebie level business. I might be at I'm the person who would actually hire you for a higher tiered service versus like grabbing your Phoebe and just learning who
Yep.
you are. But yet I still have that same issue. So when we're looking at like our content as like buckets, or
Mhm.
you might call them categories or something else, how do we kind of notice like what is our through line? Like an overall theme of our brand, versus something that is kind of siloed to our different offers or our different
Mm.
audience brackets? Is
That's what
there like an
makes
experimentation there or a maturity there that happens over time?
what you're talking about are like, okay, what's the through line of my messaging? Where like what are the things I stand on? You could call them pillars or buckets or whatever you want to call them. And then you are drilling down even further on each one based on the offer that you are supporting. But my
Right.
guess is like that I feel like we are taught to do that and it's really kind of overcomplicated content marketing. And I don't think it needs to be that complicated because my guess is not necessarily what you teach in your $37 program and at your high levels, like say your group programs or your one-to-ones. I'm not saying it's like you're talking about the exact same thing, but I'm guessing that there are tenets that you are always pointing to that no matter what somebody is buying or using from you, that you have philosophies like Tracie philosophies, Tracie isms, Tracie things that Tracie wants you to know about this thing that kind of saturate down no matter what thing you're specifically selling. Is
Mm.
that true for your
Wait.
business?
Yeah, I mean, just anybody listening, they'll hear the same crap coming out of my mouth over and over again, right?
Yes.
Eh, and that's because like when it comes to the sales messaging, right? I'm
Mhm,
always talking about pulling out the different pieces for what it is that your offer is, right?
mhm, mhm,
But when it comes to that content part, to your point of complication, it can be so convoluted, and it can come into like so many different things that's where someone like me who it's like if I don't want to be out there doing the jazz hands and doing the song and dance, then just forget it. I would rather put my blood, sweat, and tears into the part that makes the money and not into the part that feels like infotainment
mhm.
and just that would just make me want to cry anyway. So like is there a solution or is there not?
I
Is
think
this
there
just
is
something
a
that's going to
solution.
get away and thrown away?
No, I think there is a solution. Number 1, you and I when we had we had our chat, our just off the cuff chat before, you were
Yeah.
just talking about your expertise. And you were just like, "I don't know how to do content." And then you were just like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, Tracy, that's all content. What's the matter with you? You can't see that that's all content." And I think that's what happens to a lot of experts is they're so in their expertise that it's hard to see like, "Oh, this is the content." And there's a lot of ways to approach what you want to talk about. And again, it doesn't have to be these are the 10 things I cover in my content, but I'm going to guess that you talk about the same 3 to 5 things and you could call them like umbrellas or buckets or whatever. And they could even be like as generic as my philosophy on selling and that maybe you have a couple of things to say about my philosophy of selling. They are not the same for everyone. And that's why I would never say like content pillars are always going to be, your philosophy, 3 things you want people to know. It doesn't have to be like that. They're really very personal and
Mm,
customizable. And, for example, for me, one of my pillars is say one of my pillars is you don't have to be in the spotlight to do effective marketing. Under that pillar alone, I have a million things to say. I can talk about tactics, I can talk about strategies, I could talk about mindset shifts, but that pillar alone is enormous, right? The other thing I could talk about is, understanding yourself, knowing yourself and what that means for your content strategy, what that means for your content tactics or your marketing tactics. That alone could be its whole other thing. So right there are 2 enormous buckets and underneath it gives me a lot of fodder to talk about. And I think people have overcomplicated it because no matter what I'm selling, if you don't buy into the fact that you get to do content your way and that you have to know yourself in order to do it, then I'm not your person at all. So it doesn't matter what I'm selling. If my content pillar doesn't resonate with you, then I'm never going to be your person.
and that's the beautiful part, right? So I
Yeah.
think another underlying message there is that breaking the habit, getting out of the self-judgment.
Yeah.
because part of it is like, "Oh my gosh, is 3 enough? Is 5 enough? Don't I need 15 in order?" Because if we're supposed to have so much freaking content,
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, all the things." It's like, then don't we need 15 of them so that way we're not just saying the same crap over and over again?
Oh, I'm so glad you
A
brought this
and
up. Can I just speak to that for a moment?
absolutely.
Okay, you think you need more content than you do, but I wanna remind everyone listening that you're the only person reading 100% of your marketing content. Other people, even if you have like I have a 60% open rate on my email list, which is a good open rate, that means 40% of people are not seeing any of my emails. And where you're showing up on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever, 1 to 2% of the people who even raised their hand and said, I want to follow this person, only 1 to 2% of those people are seeing your content. So where we can get saturated with our content, we have to remember, first of all, not everybody is seeing it. So if they see it again, or if they see it in a different form, or if they see it with a different spin or a different story or a different example, it's okay. First of all, because not
Mhm.
everybody has seen it. Second of all, it takes people a while to digest it. So seeing something in a few different ways, a variation on a theme is not a problem because it helps people embody it a little bit more, understand it, come to it more easily. And the other thing is, if you're going to have to manage your mindset around your content because you're going to get bored with it way faster than your audience is. And
Mm.
it makes sense. You're living and breathing your content. The stuff you're probably talking about is maybe not elementary to you, but it's like breathing to you. And so for you to be talking about it and putting it out there, and like you're over it, like you've moved past it. Even with your clients, you're further down the road in the, like your clients aren't even talking about this content anymore because they're working with you and you've brought them further down their journey. But your audience hasn't gotten yet to where your clients are. So don't assume that they're bored by it just because you are, or maybe even your client would be bored by it. Remember, there's a spectrum of bringing people along on their client journey. So managing your mind around your boredom with your content is a real thing.
It is, and that's also how you get known for something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
that repetition. It's like, otherwise, you're never seen as an expert, and sometimes that can be part of the fear. "Oh, is this what I wanna be known for?
Beautiful point.
Oh, is this the thing?" Right? And that's where we have to realize that it is our business, and we're allowed to evolve, we're allowed to expand. So, we have to come back and think, "Am I getting bored?" Or is this a fear? Is there just more reading and more out of the bubble and seeing like what else is going
Mm,
on out there in the wild that I need to kind of intake to kind of freshen up? Or
mhm.
am I actually, kind of evolving as a business owner and I want to see what other things are out there? Because there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. But it's not always like I have to burn it down and start all over again since
In
it's just
evolving.
that, yeah, and all businesses do that, and that is the beauty of it, just like all humans do it. I mean, we
Yeah.
do it, it's the same kind of behavior that we do in regular life that is now just being put onto something like a business. So it feels heavier, it feels bigger, right? So we
Yeah.
have to give ourselves that grace. And I think a lot of it is that it feels so public, it feels so big. Our name is all over, our stamp is all over it. So, oh gosh, is it only just this 3 to 5, or is this enough to put everything on? Or do I know enough? Is this good enough? Do I have enough references or resources or quotes or all of these things that we end up like stopping ourselves, right? Or trying to find 15 things instead of just 3 to 5, and so we never
Yeah.
even give ourselves a chance to be known for
That's
something.
right. I had this woman who would circle me all of the time. She's a medical professional, and she knew she needed help with her messaging and her content, but she just did not want to sit down and do it or invest in it. And
Mm.
I would watch what she put out, and it was like a pinball machine because she believed she needed to put something out every day that was a little bit different. And her audience it was confusing for her audience because, like, okay, we're talking about
Yeah.
pregnancy today. And then today we're talking about what if you lift something this way? Like it was just ping, 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 ping. And she had a lot of knowledge, but because there was no through line or thread that we could bring like that we could follow as an audience member, it's a lot for your audience to try to sort through. So if you think like I have to have 15 things to say and I always have to be saying something different and coming at it from a new way, it's actually it can be wearing on your audience. There's a way to talk about your topics without being boring, without defaulting to here I am, like, look at what I'm doing, and also without giving away all the hows. And those are the three things I think if you can just believe that that's possible, just start tuning in. What are the five things, three to five things that you wind up talking to your clients about all the time, or the problems that they show up with all the time? The things you wish they knew, the myths in the industry, like any of these things are worthy topics, but you don't need 10, 12, 15 of them.
So, Jen, if people want to hear those things from you, where do they hear those?
Well, I have a podcast which is called Content Creation Made Easy. On that podcast, I do tend to put the spotlight on other people because I love to bring in experts because there's so much information out there about content. But my goal is to make it palatable and consumable and digestible. At my website, you can get something that I created specifically for service providers who want to step out of the spotlight. And I called it the Backstage Brilliance Toolkit, Marketing
Love that.
Toolkit. And your audience will get a link to a code that will give it to them totally for $0. And but in that is I break down strategies beyond what we talked about today, but I also provide 21 content prompts that we didn't even get to talk about today, which is another it's a how to use actual content prompts to get you started thinking about what to say where it's not about you, it's about their audience centric prompts. And
Mm.
so I show you how to use them in an infinite way so that you don't have to worry about, ever running out of them. They can get that at jenliddy.com/backstage. And I'll give you the link to put that in there and then a code to make it $0. But that would probably be the best place for people to start. But just at my website, jenliddy.com, you can find out a lot more about, how I work with people, etc.
Yeah, I love that. And, and remember, like these content prompts are for you to be able to pick and choose, right? You don't have to use all
Yeah.
21.
No, and in fact, I broke them down because I wrote them out and then I'm like, I can sort these even further. This is my projector and teacher brain working
Yeah.
here. I'm like, I can sort these down. So they're actually broken into three sections of meeting your audience at the beginning of their journey, their problem unaware to problem aware journey, and then moving them into the middle of their journey where they become solution curious, and then moving them to the end of their journey where they're ready to take some action. So they're actually like, you can pick and choose how to use them, and they do different things for your audience depending on where your audience is.
I love that. And I love how like this has really like informed your overall life, right? And like it moved you from one career into a new one and then it's allowed your whole business to evolve.
Yeah.
As you've learned about yourself, then you've been able to bring that into your clients and you've been able to bring other people freedom, into how we deal with this thing like needing to, stand in the spotlight and be out there a little bit. And it's like maybe not like a hard spotlight, maybe either a soft
Right.
one or just the whole stage can be lit, even if I'm the only
Yeah,
one
I
there.
love that. I love that idea. Yeah, you don't necessarily wanna be hiding, and you don't wanna necessarily be
Right.
completely but you wanna be known and visible without feeling I don't know another way to say it except, like, in the hard spotlight. I think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah, 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 that's my theater
I
background there.
like
It's
that.
like I want the house lights on and the stage lights on and a nice little soft gel going over me. Yeah, yeah, but not like a hard spotlight that then follows you every step of the
Right,
way, right?
right, right.
Right? Because I mean, you're still allowed boundaries, you don't have to overshare.
Yes.
You
Mhm.
don't, like you're still allowed a vulnerability line and you still get to pick all of that, even in this very content-driven world where people are encouraged not just to produce all the time, but to monetize it. Right. So, we can still create those boundaries and live the kind of life that we imagine as digital entrepreneurs. And,
Yeah.
and that was why I wanted to bring Jen on and kind of talk about like what is your life actually like? And then how can
Mm.
we do this for ourselves? So
Yeah,
thank you,
because
Jen,
people
for
wanna
being
make an impact, they just wanna do quiet impact, and that's what I'm teaching.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Tracy. I love this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more of a ripple impact, not a cannonball. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
that's
my
good too.
style.
I like that. Thanks for having me
Yes,
on,
yes.
Tracy.
Until next time. Yes, of course, of course. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me here in Cocktails, Coffee, and Conversations. Be sure to check out the show notes for all the links mentioned today. And while you're there, I'd love for you to rate and review the show. And if you have a topic or question you want me to answer, I want to hear it. Head to traciepatterson.com/AMA and ask me anything about business. If I don't know it, I'll bring it up with one of my guests. Until next week, be well and have some fun.